Welcome to the first installment of the Project Management Guide, my second series on this channel, and definitely going to be a lot longer than the Naruto networking series, which of course was my first series and, Crash Course, kind of my first attempt at the whole series thing. So, we'll see what the response is to that, but this is going to be a much longer series. We're talking 10 plus installments since we're talking about project management and the different sides of it. So you're going to be able to indulge in this one a lot longer than the first series. So, since we're talking about project management, we're going to use this series to go over the different sides of project management, the three PMs, honestly, first and foremost, the three PMs, focusing on project management, defining what projects are, and the different approaches that you can take when it comes to managing projects. So, first things first, what's a project? A project is anything that's temporary, it has a timeline to it, it is not meant to go on forever. When you're talking about things that are meant to go on forever when it comes to making products or developing and maintaining a product or service that you've introduced to the world and now it's taken on a life of its own, it's become influential, and that's your bread and butter. It keeps the lights on, keeps the bills paid, you may have employees about it, or that revolve around it, that type of thing, and it's something that can go on for 20 plus years. You're talking about an operation that's ongoing. It never stops, right? It may change form or shape, but it never truly stops. For example, when it comes to musicians, they usually, especially rap people, they tend to refer to their albums as projects because that's what they are. They, behind closed doors, most likely had a deadline. Celebrities have come out about this. They had to get certain samples cleared, and because a certain deadline wasn't met, it didn't make the album, or the album may have been pushed back and delayed because it didn't meet a certain deadline because this and that happened. Those are all symptoms of a project. That's why they tend to call, including these days, mixtapes, because mixtapes are basically albums. Then these days, mixtapes and albums are referred to as projects because they don't go on forever. Like once they drop an album, they move on to the next project, the little thing that only consumes either months of time or even years of time until it's released. And by that time, you're usually on to the next thing already in your plans, right? So that's a project. So project management is about managing those little projects, whether they're short-term projects, whether they're long-term projects that carry on for years, and focusing on meeting a certain budget expectation, the final product, what is it supposed to have, what is it not supposed to have, how is it supposed to function, what's the goal of it, where's the funding for it going to come from, all these different things. These are all different things that come with project management and a project. Now, because of the tech wave, of course, everyone most likely has heard about project management by now, and there's plenty of TikTok videos that talk about what it's like being a project manager, day in the life videos, and things like that. There are two main positions I think that we've heard of: project manager. You hear a little bit about program manager. That's another one that's come up. I've never heard of a portfolio manager, but that is the third level or form of project management. So let's break this down a bit. Project management is the first level. That's the lowest level of the three PMs, where you're focusing ideally on one project, but these days, most likely at least a few projects at a time. When you're responsible for, again, the timeline, making sure it's completed on time, or certain chapters or sections of it are met on time or complete on time, which ultimately leads to it being complete on time in the long run. That's the idea. Making sure that it doesn't cost more than it's supposed to, budgetary restraints, making sure that the contacts that are funding or are key people in the process of this project, that they're all up to date. If anything left field happens that throws the whole project off, you as a project manager may have to call a meeting to get certain stakeholders and other people on the same page so that they know what's coming, what do they want to do about it, and then you implement those new strategies into the project, whether it gets tossed to the side or whether it gets delayed, but you still need to complete it. But that's the idea. Project management, for the sake of this video, let's just say you're focusing on one project at a time. Now you have program management, which is the tier above that. Program management is basically focusing on a group of different projects that may or may not be related. So let's say as a program manager, let's just say you may have 5 project managers all handling 1 or 2 projects each that are under your watch. That group of projects between those 5 different managers is a program, and you're the program manager. So you're overseeing all of those over however long it takes for those projects to be done and new ones to be introduced. And it works its way out, works its way in, works its way out, works its way in. Then the third level is portfolio management, which Portfolio management is to program management, as program management is to project management. It's the same thing. It's just a higher level. So the same way you have programs, which is basically a coalition of multiple projects, usually under the watch of multiple project managers, portfolio managers, or at least portfolio management as a concept, is the same thing, just you have a group of programs, which is even more projects under program managers, which means under even more project managers, under the watchful eye of a portfolio manager. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense. Project management, lowest level. Program management, which is basically one person that's responsible for a group of projects, but those projects may be more directly monitored by project managers below them. And then portfolio managers does the same thing, just to program managers, and they're responsible for everything from the top down, right? So there are two, well, really one, but I guess you can say I'm gonna split this up to two things. There are two things that are pretty important when it comes to projects and the overall concept of project management. You have methodology and method, and those are two different things, or at least I'm making them two different things. So let's talk about methodology versus method. So in a previous video, I basically made a comparison or a contrast video from basically comparing architects versus engineers, right? And what some of those differences were. One video, I asked the question, are you a Captain America, which is an architect, or are you an Iron Man, which is an engineer? We're going to try to paint a similar picture here. Methodology versus methods. Another way you can look at this is strategy versus tactics, right? That's another, comparison, line of things that we tend to get mixed up. But we're going to do the same approach. We're going to take the same approach here. So methodology is to method as tactics are to strategy. What do I mean by that? A lot of people get strategy and tactics confused. Strategy is more big picture oriented. Matter of fact, and I may have to tread lightly on this, we can even appeal this to men versus women. Men are very big picture oriented. We're not as detail oriented as our ladies. So we tend to excel in strategy. So for example, if you have a coach, when you're preparing, let's say you're a pro athlete and you're preparing for a game against a very tough team, the strategy may be to identify the three main players, the three main playmakers on the team, and to shut them down, right? But in terms of how you're going to do that, that's a little more detail oriented. That comes down to tactics. That's when you get more into like our ladies, where they're more detail oriented and they're focused particularly on how we get things done. So methodology, strategy, the big picture. This is what falls under a certain label, whether it's Scrum, Agile, Kanban, I think is how it's pronounced, or Lean, Six Sigma, all those things. That's where you get strategy. That's the big picture. That's the overall format that we're going with. But we still don't have all the details yet. That's where you have tactics or the method itself. What exact way or particular way are we using to get this done so that, going back to the basketball analogy, we can win the game? Because your strategy may be to shut down, let's just say, when it comes to the Lakers that LeBron is on, and they're like, well, obviously we need to shut down LeBron. Okay, well, what's the particular way we're going to do that throughout the course of the whole game? And then on top of that, tactics, another thing is being able to adapt to things that you didn't see coming, before when you were just studying and preparing for the game. So let's say because LeBron likes to get into the paint a lot, well, his style of play has changed, but before he used to get in the paint a lot. Now he's more of a distance shooter. But before you get into the paint, you're like, okay, let's keep him out of the paint and force him to shoot long range. But how would you do that? Which team members would you use to do that? Would you double or triple team him, right? Those are more detail-oriented themes. And then do you assign that responsibility again to certain players, or is this something that we're going to rotate to throw him off? You see how we're getting more into the nitty-gritty of these things, and it can easily go down a rabbit hole? That's tactic. That's the method. How are we going to do this? Versus methodology, the big picture. Here's the idea, just the general idea of how we're going to get this done, and this should lead to our success. But this may look very different when we hit the court. Now, in the tech world, there are different forms of project management. Like project manager is the general term that people are looking for, but there are other versions of it. For example, Scrum Master, which of course follows the Scrum methodology. And we'll touch more on that later. But point being, you have different methodologies that are more in demand than others. For example, you have project manager, but whenever I look at a job description for project managers, I would say the number one methodology I tend to see is Agile for the most part. Everyone's going towards an Agile approach. The only other one that I've seen in the same level of demand is Scrum Master, which again follows the Scrum methodology. I've seen Kanban here and there in job descriptions in demand, but not nearly as much. But that one's also kind of here and there as well. You can get certifications for these different type of things, but from what I can tell, it's not the biggest in demand thing. As long as you're able to get the job done, you should be okay. But that's pretty much the whole gist there. But some formats of project management are more demand than others. So right now, I would say the top three, you could either go for Agile, which falls more into traditional project management, or Scrum, or Lean/Lean Six Sigma. They're actually two different things. Actually, they might be three different things. You have Lean, Six Sigma, then Lean Six Sigma. I don't know, those are three totally different things, but I know Lean and Six Sigma are their own things. So I would say those are the top 3, 4 that you can go after that are more in demand right now, especially since certain methodologies tend to excel in different industries, say like traditional architecture, building houses and things. There are methodologies of project management that suit that type of environment, but don't suit what I do in corporate and tech. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there, guys. This is just the introduction and part 1 of the project management guide. Hope this was still somewhat helpful. From this point on, we're going to cover more of the in-depth methodologies themselves and basically how they differ from one another. So you can look forward to that. And again, it's going to be a long series. I may spread this out a good bit. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you guys want me to prioritize certain methodologies over other ones to understand the difference, what industries do they excel in or are primarily used in and things like that, go ahead and give me that feedback in the comment section below, and I'll go ahead and get started on that. Thank you. I'll talk to you guys next time.